Please just beat the New York Rangers to start the new year.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Thursday, January 2nd, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's podcast, we're going to discuss the Bruins trying to reset heading into 2025, beginning tonight against a New York Rangers team that is very beatable. And we'll take a look at the Eastern Conference power rankings heading into tonight's game as well. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. If you're new to the podcast, I've been covering this team for various outlets for about 20 years now. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan dating back to the 1980s. That's how old I am. And I was a full-time hockey news editor at The Score, where I covered all things hockey, including the World Juniors, which are ongoing. No Bruins prospects to speak of. And I've been hosting this podcast since 2019. So really the sixth year that we're in here in the history of Locked On Boston Bruins. And it's so great to be discussing this team with you once again, even though, let's be honest, the first half of this season, as Brad Marchand said yesterday, wasn't quite what anyone wanted it to be or what they expected it to be. The second quarter was definitely better. We're not really through that, even though it feels like the unofficial start of the second half of the season. Marchand said there's definitely areas they can improve, but their 5-on-5 game has come, which I guess is true. Special teams need to be a little bit better. We'll discuss that, of course, as we did yesterday when I pointed out that Boston's shooting percentage 5-on-5 is actually higher than what it is on the power play, which is just all kinds of ridiculous. The Bruins started the new year with a little bit of a different kind of day in New York as they got ready to take on the Rangers tonight. Practice taking place at the rink at Chelsea Piers along the Hudson River. It's kind of an old school recreational type facility, home to a number of local youth and club teams. Space was a bit limited though, so they had to dress at their hotel and bus over in full equipment. Fun to be in New York on New Year's Day. And as Marchand said, there's not many opportunities to do this, to do something kind of out of the norm, dress at the hotel, come over to the rink. Bruins not playing an outdoor game, so there's not really those kind of opportunities this year. Added a bit of a different element to the day. Guys had a lot of fun with it. And any of these kind of old rundown buildings and rinks, they're not very comfortable. It's definitely what they all grew up playing with. Brings back those memories from being a kid playing kind of minor hockey. They had the windows looking out to the water, a cool place to practice, a fun building to be in, and the guys had fun with it today. Joe Sacco called it a change of pace for the guys. Get to look at the outdoors. Just a quick 30-minute practice to get their legs under them. Heavy workload, busy schedule, especially in January. Some tough games coming up, so it was good to have a bit of fun. And the energy level was a bit different when you change the scenery. But as Brad Marchand was saying, special teams is an area where they need to get a little bit better. Hopefully they took a look at the power play here at Chelsea Piers. The biggest thing they need to improve on is the power play. The penalty kill hasn't been especially great either. But Marchand said their 5-on-5 game, their compete level, their structure has gotten a lot better. And you're seeing the results under Joe Sacco. Under Sacco, the Bruins are 12-6-1, 25 points, tied with Washington and New Jersey for the fourth best mark in the league over that span. However, as we'll see in the power rankings later on, they're still a bit of a bubble team when it comes to the playoffs, and their overall goal differential not particularly spectacular. The game in Washington the other night, or afternoon, I should say, Marchand said it's a game they didn't play well, but they also easily could have won it. Special teams was the difference. The Bruins did not score on the power play. The Capitals did, and that was pretty much the difference. The Capitals scored even strength goal, power play goal, empty net goal. The Bruins scored one even strength goal. If they were able to get a power play tally, then things could have been different. Now, since the Bruins relieved Jim Montgomery of his head coaching duties on November 19th, Boston's power play, 14.8%, penalty kill, 75.5%. Those both rank 24th. So, some improvement, I guess. The power play was dead last and still is near the bottom of the NHL. For the season, the Bruins are 25th on the penalty kill, 30th on the power play. So there's been some improvement under Joe Sacco for sure, but some inconsistencies. Like I pointed out yesterday, the Bruins, they've taken the most penalties in the NHL, but they've also drawn the most penalties in the NHL. So with some improvement on the penalty kill and the power play, they could be cooking a bit more here coming up in the 2025 portion of the season. Things aren't working on the power play. They need to shake things up. They tried to shake things up before Hampus Lindholm was injured by putting him on the top unit. That only lasted one game, I think. Currently, they have Mason Lohrei on the top unit with David Pastrnak, Justin Brazeau, Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie. I'd say load up the top unit with Lindholm, Marchand, Pastrnak, Zacha, and Lohrei and see what happens there. Joe Sacco is looking for ways to make the special teams more consistent. They have to produce more on the power play, create a bit more momentum. They had a swing going for a little while there where they started to, but it got away from them in his estimation. We have to be better in that area, he said. Their 5-on-5 play, he feels like they've stabilized it for the most part. They can always try to produce more offensively, but 5-on-5 has been stabilizing. The PK has given up some goals lately, but still trending in the right direction. And they just quite simply have to get the power play going. And like I mentioned, better shooting percentage 5-on-5 than on the power play, which is pretty ridiculous. Now at 5-on-5, this team pretty much is perhaps what it is. And I looked at the PDO numbers the other day, which is basically a measure of shooting percentage, save percentage, and the belief is that you will kind of level out around an even 100. And out of 32 teams in the NHL, the Bruins, Red Wings, St. Louis Blues, and the New Jersey Devils are all around exactly 100. And they rank 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, right in the middle. The Bruins right now have a shooting percentage of 8.57, which ranks them, let's see here. The Bruins rank in terms of shooting percentage, 8.57. That's 22nd in the NHL. Save percentage is at 12th in the NHL at 91.54. So their shooting percentage could still improve a bit on 5-on-5 if they're able to get it going on the power play and at least match what they're doing at 5-on-5. They will be much better off for it. And hopefully they can get that started tonight against a New York Rangers team that is struggling, that will be without their star goaltender. And we'll preview that game here as the podcast continues. One of my favorite things in life is going to live events, whether it's a hockey game, a concert, comedy. And one of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. I went to a couple, Strumbella's, Arkells, energy and excitement off the charts. Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can even get a view from your seat in the app so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive at the venue. The app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Because what time is it? It is game time. Speaking of game time, the Bruins will play their first game of 2025 tonight, 7 p.m. at Madison Square Garden. Brad Marchand saying it's always special to play at Madison Square Garden, one of the best arenas in the NHL. And the Bruins are getting a chance to take on a Rangers team that is really struggling. They're 2-8 over their past 10 games, 4 straight losses, 1 win in their past 7 or 8, I should say, and a team that's also going to be without Igor Shesterkin, who landed on IR. Now, their backup is decent. Jonathan Quick will be in net. He's got a .907 save percentage, which is better than both Jeremy Swayman and Joonas Korpisalo. Sacco said he was leaning towards giving Swayman the start. He's 13-11-3 with an .891 save percentage, and they really need to get him going in order to improve here in 2025. It's the first of 3 meetings between these two teams. They'll play again on February 1st and then on February 5th. So 3 games in just over a month between these two teams. They're led in scoring, the Rangers are, by Vincent Trocheck over their past 5 games. 2 goals, 3 assists in that span. Their leading scorer is Artemi Panarin, 39 points in 34 games. But then after that, it's a real mash of disappointment so far for this team. Chris Kreider, who was the healthy scratch recently, 12 goals, 1 assist in 32 games. Mika Zibanejad's got only 21 points. The second leading scorer for this team, I don't think anyone would guess it, is Will Kyle, who's got 11 goals, 13 assists for 24 points. They do have talent on this team. Alex Lafreniere, Riley Smith, Philip Hedl. They did trade Kaapo Kakko, who's been very good for the Seattle Kraken so far. They've got Adam Fox on the back end with 28 points. I guess he's higher than Kyle. That was my mistake there. Forgive the dulcet sounds of Fortnite in the background. But all that to say, the Rangers are a very beatable team. And this could be a bit of a trap game for the Bruins because of that. You can bet the Rangers are going to want to start 2015 on a better note than they finished. Again, 2 wins in their past 10 games, 4 straight losses heading into the new year. And one thing that this team has excelled in, the Rangers, is the penalty kill. So that could not bode well for Boston trying to get back on track on the power play. The Rangers have a penalty kill of 84.7%, which is second in the NHL. And like I mentioned, the Bruins penalty kill still at 25th with a 75.6% success rate. The Bruins power play ranks 30th. The Rangers is only 23rd, which is the same ranking they have in terms of goals for per game, 2.81, which is still more than the Bruins. Despite the Rangers' struggles, they're still producing higher than the Bruins, who are at 2.62. The Bruins are allowing 3.03 goals per game. The Rangers are allowing 3.14. And hopefully, the downturn from Shesterkin to Quick will be to the Bruins' benefit here tonight. The Bruins are led in scoring over the past 5 games by Charlie Coyle, who's got 3 goals. David Pastrnak has 3 assists. Brad Marchand, their leading scorer, with 5 points in his past 5 games. The Bruins are 5-4-1 in their last 10. They're coming off a loss to the Washington Capitals. And again, it's the first game of 3 between the Rangers and the Bruins this season. The Rangers, outside of the playoff picture at the moment, a losing record, 16-9-1. The Bruins are 20-15-4. And again, this is a game that could go one of 2 ways for the Bruins. Either they assert their dominance over a team that is reeling at the moment, or the Bruins fall into a trap and lose to the team that is very beatable. And the Rangers are really reeling at the moment, as I mentioned. Not only did they already trade Sacco, but one of their better, younger defensemen, Zach Jones, clearly frustrated as well by being scratched quite often, even despite the fact that this team is losing. He's going to sit for the 5th time in 6 games when the Rangers host the Bruins tonight. He was a regular in the lineup before the Rangers acquired Will Borgen in the Seattle trade, Urho Vakanainen in the trade with Jacob Trouba going to Anaheim. So Vakanainen likely will get into the lineup here tonight against the team that drafted him in the first round. Jones saying it bleeping sucks to be scratched. He's not a 32-year-old guy collecting a paycheck. He's a guy who wants to earn his paycheck. He needs to play. He needs to have things, he needs to play in order to improve on the things he needs to improve on. That's what he wants to be, a full-time NHL player. Wants to be a guy who plays 82 games and in the lineup every night. Again, he's not the first player to voice his displeasure about lineup choices. Days before being traded to Seattle, Sacco said he was being used as a scapegoat when the club scratched him. Jones is a 3rd-round pick in 2019. And he's a guy that, if you look at the Rangers lineup, there's not 6 defensemen who are better than this guy. Maybe I'm biased because I have him on my keeper fantasy team and I want to see him in the lineup. But right now you have Lindgren, Fox, K'Andre Miller, Will Borgen, Vakanainen, Schneider. I'm sorry, but he's at least better than Vakanainen. So curious lineup decisions. That could be a benefit for the Bruins as well. And we'll see what happens tonight. Before puck drop, though, let's take a look at the updated Eastern Conference power rankings, and we'll do so here as the podcast continues. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but there's still time to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. It's not just for the NFL. You can get in on the action with the NFL, NHL, NBA as well. Now, all you have to do is visit FanDuel.com, and you can get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com to join today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let us quickly run down the Eastern Conference power rankings before we sign off and get ready for tonight's game against the New York Rangers. And when you look at power rankings, I beg people to look at point percentage and not total points. If you look at total points, the Bruins are 6th in the Eastern Conference, 2 back of the Carolina Hurricanes. You think, oh, that's pretty good. But if you look at point percentage, goal differential, at the very least, you get a bit of a different picture. Let's look at the bottom moving up. The bottom team in the East right now, the sad sack Buffalo Sabres, a .421 point percentage with a -12 goal differential, 3-7 over their past 10 games. Next is the New York Rangers. They're ever so slightly worse than the Islanders and the Detroit Red Wings. The Rangers have a point percentage of .458. The Red Wings are .459. The New York Islanders, .461. The Rangers might get a bit of an edge because they have a better goal differential than both of those two teams. But those 4 are under 500 and the clear bottom teams in the East at the moment. The next 4 are all at 500 and have an outside chance of challenging for a playoff spot. That includes the Montreal Canadiens, the Philadelphia Flyers, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Pittsburgh Penguins. These are all teams the Bruins have to keep an eye on because while you have those bottom four under 500, probably outside of the playoff picture, let's be honest, then these middle four could conceivably challenge and push for a playoff spot. Pittsburgh's played better as of late. They used to be at the bottom. The Blue Jackets, they have some pieces there. Canadians surprising people with a 7-3 record over their past 10, 3 wins in a row. So that's your bottom 8 at the moment. Now we have the top 8, of which the Bruins are a part right now. Right now, the Bruins are 7th in the East with a point percentage of .564. They are 2 points ahead of Tampa, but Tampa's got 5 games in hand. So that's 10 points on the table. And the likelihood of Tampa taking advantage of that and catching the Bruins is pretty high. And if you compare Tampa's goal differential of plus 37 to Boston's minus 16, you see what we're dealing with here. In fact, the Bruins have a worse goal differential than Ottawa, who's at plus 7. The Bruins are currently at minus 16. The Senators are only 4 points back of the Bruins as well, and they have 3 games in hand. So it's quite possible they could pass the Bruins as well. Meaning, if you add it all up, the Bruins are probably in the 8th spot, a bubble team, and they're benefiting from the fact that the bottom 8, they're all pretty bad right now, overall. The top 6, you have, like I mentioned, Tampa, Carolina, New Jersey, Florida, Toronto, and Washington. That's in ascending order. And all 6 of those teams, if you look at the playoff picture at the moment, you would have, I guess you would have right now Boston in 3rd. But that's likely to change. If you're ranking by top 8 by point percentage and looking at the matchups, you would have Washington versus Ottawa, Toronto, Boston, Florida, Tampa, and then New Jersey and Carolina. I don't see Boston beating any of those top 6 teams in the first round. That's just my personal opinion at the moment, pending any movement at the trade deadline. If you look at goal differential, the Bruins are a bottom 5 team in the East. Only Philly, the Islanders, the Red Wings, and the Penguins have worse goal differentials. And if you look league-wide, that you can add San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Anaheim to that mix as the only teams with worse goal differentials than the Boston Bruins. Yes, a big part of that was the start under Jim Montgomery, but they were minus 25 or 21, I believe, when he was fired. Right now, they're minus 16. So some improvement, I guess, but still not quite where you want them to be. Now, again, if you look at the results since Jim Montgomery was fired, we'll go back to November to today. The Bruins, point percentage-wise, are 5th in the NHL, tied with the Capitals. They've scored a decent amount of goals. Their defense has improved. There are improvements under Joe Sacco, but again, you look at their quality of competition, not necessarily super high. And it's going to be a tough go here in January, and we'll have a better view of what this team is all about by the time we hit the Four Nations face-off break in the middle of February. There'll be a couple weeks off between February 8th and the 22nd, and we'll get a better idea of who these Bruins are, especially in the coming days when they play Toronto, the Islanders, Oilers, Lightning, Panthers coming up here. But it all begins tonight against the New York Rangers. It's a game we will recap on tomorrow's podcast, as well as preview Saturday's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Bring you all the latest on the black and gold here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Do check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast next, where steal, and flip. We'll give you all the tips you need to get the edge in your league this week. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.